What if the most dangerous weapon in hip-hop right now isn't a diss track, a lawsuit, or even a federal case? What if it's a hard drive? Because right now, 50 Cent is sitting at the center of one of the messiest storms hip-hop has seen in years. Alleged leaked footage, threats of more documentaries, quiet warnings aimed at T.I., rumors involving Jay-Z, and a growing fear across the industry that if 50 really has what people think he has, then this story is only getting started. And the craziest part, he's not moving like a rapper anymore. He's moving like a producer, a strategist, and a man who knows exactly how to turn old beef into career-ending public pressure. So in this video, we're breaking down the alleged leaked footage, the Diddy documentary fallout, why T.I. suddenly has reason to be nervous, how Jay-Z's name keeps getting dragged into the conversation, and why so many people believe 50 Cent's documentary era might be more dangerous than his diss track era ever was. Because when 50 goes quiet, that's usually when things get loud. Let's start with the moment that really set this entire conversation on fire. When Sean Combs' The Reckoning dropped, people expected controversy, but what they didn't expect was just how explosive the reaction would be. This wasn't treated like some random celebrity scandal recap. It felt bigger than that, darker than that, more calculated. And one detail stood out above everything else: the footage. According to reports surrounding the documentary, some of the most talked about material was allegedly filmed in the days leading up to Diddy's legal collapse. That immediately changed the tone, because now this wasn't just about old accusations or recycled internet rumors. It became about access, about proximity, about who had cameras rolling at the exact wrong time. And that's where the industry panic really begins. Because if footage like that really ended up in 50 Cent's orbit, then people are no longer looking at him as just the petty troll of hip-hop. They're looking at him as somebody with real media power, somebody who can take years of tension, private material, public allegations, and behind-the-scenes chaos, and package it into something millions of people will watch. That changes everything. For years, 50's enemies could laugh off the memes. They could brush off the Instagram trolling. They could call him bitter, petty, obsessed, whatever they wanted. But once a documentary drops and starts shaping public conversation on a massive level, that's different. That's when people stop laughing. That's when people start checking what he might have next. And from that point on, the real question wasn't whether 50 had made his point. The real question became, what else is he sitting on? Now here's where the story gets even crazier. One of the biggest talking points online has been the claim that footage originally meant for a private project somehow ended up being used against the very person it was supposed to protect. Think about how insane that is. Imagine trying to document your side of the story, only for that same material to allegedly slip out of your control and become ammunition in the hands of one of your biggest enemies. That is nightmare fuel. And that's exactly why this story exploded the way it did. Because hip-hop understands betrayal better than almost any other industry. In rap, people expect shots from enemies. They expect sneak dices, public trolling, and online humiliation. But what they fear most is the inside job, the leak, the one person around you who wasn't supposed to switch sides. That's why this doesn't just sound messy. It sounds dangerous. Because if one set of private footage can allegedly end up outside the camp, then suddenly everybody starts wondering what else can leak, what other conversations were recorded, what other names were mentioned, what other moments were captured without people realizing how those clips could one day be used. And once that paranoia enters the room, it spreads fast. Now every artist, every former associate, every executive, every hanger-on starts asking the same question. If 50 really has access to more material, whose name comes up next? That uncertainty is power, and Curtis Jackson understands power better than almost anybody in rap. He knows that sometimes you don't even have to release the footage. Sometimes just letting people believe you might release it is enough to make the entire room uncomfortable. That's what makes this so effective. It's not just the content, it's the anticipation, it's the silence, it's the possibility that the next upload, the next interview, the next post, or the next documentary trailer could drag a whole new name into the spotlight. And once that happens, the internet does the rest. This is the part people really need to understand. The version of 50 Cent that artists used to deal with was dangerous enough. Back then, his weapons were mixtapes, radio appearances, diss tracks, street pressure, and humiliation. But that version of 50 has evolved. Now he's not just a rapper with a grudge, he's a media executive. That means the scale is different, the presentation is different, the damage is different. A diss track can trend for a week. A documentary can define a narrative for years. That's a huge difference. When 50 was going at Ja Rule, the war lived in songs, interviews, DVDs, radio, and the streets. But now, the battlefield is streaming platforms, long-form storytelling, public opinion, viral clips, and internet discourse that never stops. That makes him more dangerous now than he was in the early 2000s. Because now he can weaponize context. He can take old beef, legal drama, public accusations, insider testimony, archived footage, and social media pressure, and turn all of it into a story that feels bigger than rap. And once the public feels like a story is bigger than rap, that's when reputations really start shifting. That's why people keep saying this documentary era of 50 Cent is scarier than the rap beef era, because back then he could embarrass you. Now he can brand you. Now he can attach your name to a bigger narrative. And whether that narrative is fully fair, partially fair, or strategically edited, once it catches fire, it can follow you for the rest of your career. That is a very different kind of threat, and people in the industry know it. Now let's talk about T.I. because this is where things go from broad industry panic to something a lot more direct. The tension between 50 Cent and T.I. is not new. That history goes back years. But what made this latest chapter feel different is how quickly it got personal and how fast it spilled beyond just the two rappers. At first, this looked like another classic rap rivalry resurfacing, competitive talk, ego, legacy, the kind of back and forth hip-hop has always loved. But then the social media jabs escalated, the family got dragged in, and suddenly this stopped feeling like lyrical competition. It started feeling like retaliation. And that matters, because 50 rarely moves emotionally in public without some kind of strategy behind it. The T.I. situation became a lot uglier once family members got pulled into the mess. That's usually the point where things stop being entertaining and start becoming dangerous. Because once wives, sons, parents, and dead relatives get brought into a beef, the tone changes immediately. Now it's not about bars. Now it's about humiliation. Now it's about who can push the other side into losing control first. And that's exactly what happened here. T.I.'s side responded. King Harris responded. Social media made it worse. The clips spread everywhere. Everybody had an opinion. Everybody picked a side. And then, right when the chaos was peaking, the biggest threat entered the room, the documentary talk. That's when people stopped seeing this as just another beef, because 50 hinting at a documentary is not the same as 50 posting a meme. A meme is temporary. A documentary is a campaign. And once that possibility got attached to T.I.'s name, the entire situation changed, because now the question isn't, can T.I. win the beef? Now the question is, can T.I. control the narrative before 50 turns it into content? That's a much harder fight. The reason this alleged documentary talk hit so hard is because of the title framework people started connecting it to. Once people started seeing phrases like surviving T.I. and Tiny, the internet instantly understood the implication, and whether anything official actually materializes or not, that kind of branding is brutal. Because it doesn't just suggest controversy, it suggests a full reputational attack. It places a person inside a cultural format the public already associates with scandal, exposure, and moral collapse. Even before a trailer exists, even before a network confirms anything, even before a single episode gets made, the damage starts the moment the phrase enters the chat. That's how powerful framing is, and 50 knows that better than almost anybody. He doesn't always have to prove everything immediately. Sometimes all he has to do is place a possibility into the public imagination and let social media do the rest. That alone can disrupt album rollouts, interviews, promo runs, and public sympathy. And when you look at T.I.'s timing, that's why this became so uncomfortable. Because if you're trying to manage your image, protect your legacy, push music, and navigate legal or public baggage at the same time, the last thing you want is 50 Cent publicly hinting that your name might be next in a documentary pipeline. That's not just embarrassing, that's destabilizing. And the scariest part, even if nothing drops tomorrow, the threat still hangs there. And sometimes the threat is enough. Now, if the T.I. situation is loud, emotional, and all over social media, the Jay-Z angle is the complete opposite. It's quiet, it's cold, it's strategic, and that might be exactly why it feels so dangerous. 50 Cent and Jay-Z have had tension for decades. This is not some sudden feud that popped up last week. This goes all the way back to the era when 50 was still trying to break through and throwing shots at everybody in sight. Over the years, the dynamic stayed strangely one-sided in public. 50 would jab, question, compare, provoke. Jay would mostly stay above it, or at least appear to. And that silence became part of the rivalry itself. Because when one man keeps speaking and the other keeps refusing to really engage, the tension never truly resolves. It just hardens. It becomes history, it becomes subtext, it becomes one of those long-running Cold Wars hip-hop fans never stop paying attention to. And now that 50 is operating in documentary mode, people are looking at that old tension in a completely new way. Because Jay-Z is not just another rapper, he's an institution, he's business, he's power, he's corporate influence, he's legacy management at the highest level. So anytime 50 even hints in his direction, people immediately assume there's more going on than a petty joke. That's why the Jay-Z angle has people watching so closely, not because anything has been fully confirmed, but because the suggestion alone is explosive. And in 2026, suggestion is content. Suggestion becomes headlines, suggestion becomes commentary channels, fan pages, reaction clips, and weeks of internet discussion. That's how modern scandal works. And 50 understands that game perfectly. One of the biggest reasons Jay-Z keeps getting brought up is simple: association. When people start talking about decades of industry relationships, overlapping circles, shared rooms, shared events, shared business environments, and massive figures who've all existed near each other for years, speculation becomes inevitable. And once 50 is involved, speculation doesn't calm down, it multiplies. Now, to be clear, online conversation and actual proof are not the same thing, but in the court of public opinion, people don't wait for clean answers anymore. They build theories first and sort facts later. That's exactly why this becomes so dangerous for anybody whose name even floats into the conversation. Because once audiences believe there could be more footage, more names, more references, more unseen material, suddenly everyone connected to the broader story starts looking vulnerable. And Jay-Z is too big a name for the internet to leave alone once that kind of uncertainty starts spreading. That's why the Cold War matters. That's why 50's old comments matter. That's why every joke, every troll post, every little suggestion suddenly feels heavier than it used to. Because now people don't see 50 as just making noise. Now they see him as potentially building something. And once people believe you're building something, every hint becomes a warning. To understand why so many artists seem nervous whenever 50's name enters the chat, you have to understand his playbook. 50 doesn't always attack in one big dramatic moment. Sometimes he wears people down. First comes the trolling, then the jokes, then the reposts, then the little public embarrassments, then the periods of silence. Then suddenly, when people think the moment has passed, he comes back with something bigger. That's what makes him exhausting to go against, because he's persistent. He doesn't need the fight to stay musically active. He doesn't need the radio. He doesn't need a label to validate him. He can sit online, pick his moments, shift into television mode, shift into executive mode, shift into producer mode, and keep the pressure alive far longer than most artists can emotionally handle. That's why his old enemies still end up getting dragged back into the conversation years later. Ja Rule, The Game, Young Buck, Rick Ross, and now newer names, or at least newly revived names, are getting pulled into the orbit too. That's part of 50's legend. He doesn't just win arguments, he creates long shadows. He turns beef into identity. He turns one bad season in your career into a permanent reference point the internet never lets go of. That's why people say being on 50's target list feels different, because even if you survive the moment, you may never fully escape the narrative. This is also why every new 50 Cent threat lands harder than it would from almost anyone else. His history gives it weight. If a random rapper says, "I'm about to expose the industry," people laugh. If 50 says it, people at least pause, because he has a long track record of turning mockery into pressure campaigns. He's done it through music, he's done it through radio, he's done it through interviews, he's done it through social media, and now he's doing it through media production. So even if people don't like him, even if they think he's petty, even if they think he mixes personal vendettas with public storytelling, they still watch. That's the key. People watch. And once people watch, the narrative moves. That's why his body count in hip-hop matters here. Not because every feud ended the same way, and not because every story is simple, but because the overall reputation is clear. When 50 decides he wants to stay on your neck, he usually finds a way to keep the conversation alive. And now that he has bigger platforms than ever before, there's real fear that his next move won't just be another post. It'll be a project. That's a different level of warfare. Section 11, public service or personal vendetta. Now here's where the conversation gets complicated, because there are really two versions of this story, and both of them can be true at the same time. Version 1 says 50 is exposing real issues, calling out real power structures, amplifying stories people were too afraid to address, and forcing hip-hop to confront things it used to ignore. Version 2 says 50 is also a man with long memory, old grudges, sharp instincts, and a very obvious taste for public humiliation. And honestly, both versions can exist together. That's what makes this so messy, because once someone with a personal history becomes the messenger of serious allegations or damaging material, people immediately start asking questions about motive. Is this accountability? Is this revenge? Is it journalism? Is it branding? Is it truth? Is it strategy? In 50's case, the answer might be all of the above. That's why the debate around him is never simple. He can be petty and effective. He can be self-interested and disruptive. He can be trolling 1 minute and shifting public conversation the next. That duality is exactly what makes him so hard to dismiss, because even when people hate the way he moves, they still can't look away from the results, and that's probably exactly how he wants it. So let's be honest, who should actually be nervous right now? T.I. definitely has reason to pay attention, not just because of the public back and forth, but because once your name enters this kind of documentary speculation cycle, things can spiral fast. Jay-Z probably doesn't enjoy being loosely orbiting any conversation involving unseen footage, old tension, and 50-cent commentary. Whether his name ever becomes part of anything substantial or not, the mere possibility is enough to trigger discussion. Anybody from old beef history should be watching too, because one thing 50 loves doing is reopening old chapters when it benefits the bigger story. And honestly, it's not just rappers. That might be the scariest part. Actors, comedians, media personalities, family members, ex-associates, former insiders. Once you comment publicly or attach yourself to the wrong side of the story, you can become part of the rollout too. That's the rule with 50. Nobody is too random. Nobody is too small. Nobody is too outside the lane. If you insert yourself, you may get pulled in. And in the social media era, getting pulled in by 50 Cent is not a one-day event. It can become a months-long cycle of clips, reposts, commentary, and public ridicule. That's why so many people would rather stay quiet than test him, because they've seen what happens when he locks in. At the end of the day, this is the real story. 50 Cent has built something bigger than rap beef. He has built a system where trolling, old grudges, public allegations, media production, audience curiosity, and streaming era storytelling all work together. And that system is powerful because it doesn't need a traditional rap battle to function. He doesn't need to out-rap you anymore. He just needs the right clip, the right angle, the right title, the right moment, the right silence before the storm. That's the evolution. That's why people are uneasy, because the old 50 could diss you. The current 50 can turn you into an episode, and in some ways that's worse because songs fade, episodes live forever. So here's the question the entire industry seems to be asking right now: who's next? Because whether this all leads to more documentaries, more leaked material, more public trolling, or just more strategic fear, one thing is already clear. 50 Cent has changed the way hip-hop beef works. He's no longer just fighting with bars. He's fighting with narratives. He's fighting with distribution. He's fighting with the kind of media power that can keep a story alive long after a diss track would have died. And that's exactly why this situation has everybody watching. T.I. is watching. Jay-Z is watching. Old enemies are watching. Former friends are watching. The whole industry is watching. Because if the last chapter proved anything, it's that when 50 starts smirking, posting less, and hinting more, something bigger may already be in motion. And in today's hip-hop world, that might be more dangerous than any beef we've seen before. So now I want to know what you think. Is 50 Cent exposing the truth, or is he turning documentary filmmaking into the most ruthless revenge weapon hip-hop has ever seen? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more hip-hop drama, industry breakdowns, and stories like this, make sure you subscribe, because this one, it's definitely not over.